Good evening. Let your body settle into wherever you are right now. Feel the weight of the pillow beneath your head. Feel the warmth of the blanket, or the cool of the air, or whatever surrounds you in this quiet moment. There is nothing to do tonight, nowhere to be, nothing to solve or decide or figure out. Tonight, we are going to think about something calm, something that does not require your full attention. In fact, the less attention you give it, the better. Let it wash over you slowly, like something you already knew, but had not yet put into words. We are going to talk about an emergency fund. It is not a glamorous topic. There are no stories of fortunes made, no dramatic turning points, no excitement. Just a quiet, reliable idea that has helped ordinary people live more peacefully for a very long time. Let your shoulders drop just a little. Take one slow breath. We have all the time in the world. At its heart, an emergency fund is a very simple thing. It is money you have set aside, not for any particular purpose, not for a vacation or a gift or something you have been wanting to buy, not to invest, not to grow, not to become something else, just to be there. It is the financial equivalent of a candle in a drawer when the power goes out, or a spare tire in the trunk of your car, or a first aid kit under the bathroom sink. You hope, most of the time, that you will never need it. But you feel different knowing it is there. Most of the money in our lives is always in motion. You earn it, and then it moves toward rent, toward groceries, toward the bills that arrive on the first of each month. It is constantly flowing somewhere, constantly becoming something. An emergency fund is money that is allowed to be still. That stillness is what makes it unusual, and that stillness is what gives it its power. Think of it as a quiet room in the back of your financial life. You do not go in there often. It just sits there, calm and unchanged, while everything else moves around it. When the unexpected arrives, as it always does in every life, sooner or later, that quiet room is where you go. Not in a panic, not in desperation, just quietly and with some relief. You open the door, you take what you need, and you handle the situation. And then, slowly, over the coming months, you fill the room back up. is all an emergency fund is. A quiet room a soft place to land. And building that room is one of the most genuinely useful things you can do for yourself. Before we talk about building one, let us sit for a moment with what life feels like without one. Because most people know that feeling. You may know it yourself. Many of us have lived it or are living it right now. Your car begins to make a sound you have not heard before. Something is wrong with the brakes, or the engine, or something you cannot name. And before you even take it to a mechanic, before you know what the problem is, or what it will cost, there is a tightening in your chest. Not because the car is frightening, but because you do not know right now whether you can afford to fix it. Or your tooth begins to ache, and you wait longer than you should before making an appointment. Not because you are afraid of the dentist, but because you are already doing the math in your head, and the numbers do not look comfortable. Or your employer changes your hours, or your landlord raises the rent, or the refrigerator stops working, or a person you love needs something you had not planned for. These things happen. They have always happened. They will always happen. Life is full of the unexpected. That is not a pessimistic view. It is just an accurate one. And in the world without a cushion, each unexpected thing is a small disaster. Each one requires scrambling, calling people you would rather not call, moving money you had not planned to move, putting something on a card and telling yourself you will sort it out later. And later arrives, and there is still the balance, and the stress does not go away. It just settles into the background. Here is something that researchers who study financial well-being have found over and over in study after study. Financial stress does not stay in the financial part of your mind. It leaks into everything. When people are under persistent financial pressure, their thinking narrows. The horizon shrinks. It becomes harder to plan ahead, harder to consider the long view, harder to make the kind of patient, unhurried decisions that would actually help. The worry takes up space, and in taking up space, it leaves less room for everything else. It is harder to be fully present with people you love when part of your mind is quietly calculating and recalculating. It is harder to sleep when a number is sitting in your chest. It is harder to take risks, try new things, or simply breathe when the financial ground beneath you does not feel solid. This is not weakness. This is just what happens to a human mind under sustained uncertainty. And an emergency fund is one of the simplest, most effective ways to begin lifting that weight. Not because it solves every problem, not because it makes the unexpected stop happening, but because it changes the nature of the unexpected when it arrives. It changes what kind of event it is. Here is a phrase I want to offer you tonight. An emergency fund turns crises into errands. Say that slowly if you like. Crises into errands. When your car breaks down and you have a few months of expenses sitting quietly in a separate account, you still have to deal with the car. You still have to call the mechanic and arrange a ride and wait for the diagnosis and approve the repair. None of that disappears. But it is an errand now. An inconvenient one, certainly. A frustrating one, maybe. But just something to handle. Something that will be over in a few days and then forgotten. When you do not have that cushion, the same broken car is a completely different experience. It is not just a repair. It is the question of how you pay for it. And behind that question are all the smaller, harder questions. Do you borrow it? From whom? Do you put it on a card you are already carrying a balance on? Do you delay something else? Do you ask someone for help and feel the particular discomfort of that? And those questions ripple outward. They touch your sleep. They sit with you at dinner. They affect how you are with the people around you. The errand becomes a crisis. And a crisis, if it happens often enough, becomes a season, a way of living, a baseline level of stress that you carry without quite noticing it anymore because it has been there so long. An emergency fund does not change the facts of what happened. The car still broke. The tooth still needs attention. The unexpected thing is still unexpected. What it changes is the story your body tells itself when the thing goes wrong. Without a cushion, the nervous system reads, danger. Something must be done immediately. Everything is at risk. With a cushion, the same event reads differently. Inconvenient, annoying perhaps, but manageable. Manageable is a word that does a great deal of work in a human life. When something is manageable, you can stay calm. You can make better decisions. You can take one step at a time rather than grabbing at whatever is nearest. in staying calm, you often handle the situation better. You get a second opinion before agreeing to the expensive repair. You take a breath before calling the landlord. You make the appointment instead of waiting. The cushion does not just protect your money, it protects your thinking. And protected thinking, especially during hard moments, is worth more than almost any financial advantage you could name. You may be wondering now, how much do I actually need in this fund? It is a very natural question. The mind wants a number, something specific to aim for, something to measure progress against. And the honest answer is, it depends on your life. But there is a gentle, widely shared rule of thumb that has served many people well across many different circumstances. Think about the essentials. Not everything you spend in a month, but the true floor of what it takes to live your life. Shelter, whatever keeps a roof over your head. Food, feeding yourself and anyone who depends on you simply. Utilities, heat, electricity, water, the communication tools you need. Transportation, what it takes to get to work, or to medical care, or to the places you genuinely cannot do without. Healthcare, what you need to stay reasonably well. The minimum payments on any debts you carry, because missing those has consequences that stretch forward. Add those up approximately, not to the dollar, just a rough sense of a number. A few months of that total is a good place to aim for your emergency fund. 2 months is a start that will already change how you feel. 3 months is a solid foundation. 4 or 5 months gives you room to breathe through a longer disruption, like a job change or an unexpected gap in income. Some people, especially those in fields where work can be irregular, or those who are self-employed, or those supporting others, find that 6 months or more is what lets them truly relax. There is no universally correct answer. What matters is not the specific number. What matters is the feeling behind the number. The question worth sitting with is not, what does the formula say? The question is, if my income stopped tomorrow, how long could I manage? How long could I breathe? When the answer is 2 days, the body knows. It is always bracing, even when things are going well. Because things not going well is always one piece of bad luck away. When the answer is 3 months, something releases. A long held breath finally lets go. That release, that easing of the grip, is what you are building toward. Let us spend a little time here, because this is where many people trip themselves up. When you try to estimate your monthly essentials, the floor of what it costs to live your life, the mind tends to go in one of two directions. Neither of them is quite right. One direction is to minimize. You tell yourself, I could get by on almost nothing if I had to. Rice and beans, no subscriptions, no treats of any kind. I could survive on very little. And perhaps that is true in a purely technical sense. But the number you get from that kind of thinking is not really useful. An emergency fund built around a survival budget will not actually make you feel safe, because you know somewhere that the number is not honest. The other direction is to count everything. You start thinking about your actual spending, every subscription, every coffee, every lunch, every small thing, and the number grows large, and the goal starts to feel far away, and something in you deflates. Neither direction serves you. What you are looking for is the genuine floor of your life, as it actually is. Not punishment, not luxury, just what does it actually cost for things to hold together? Housing is almost always the largest part, whatever it costs to keep the roof. Food, genuinely. Not the food you buy when you are feeling good about your budget, but also not the food that punishes you into misery. Just the simple, honest cost of feeding yourself. Utilities, the lights, the heat, the water, the phone that connects you to the world. Getting to and from the places you actually need to go. The baseline of what you need to stay well. Any debts where missing a payment causes real downstream harm. That is your floor, just that. Everything above that floor, the streaming, the dinners out, the discretionary pleasures of life, is real. And those things matter. And in a true emergency, you would pull back on them. But the floor is the core, and that is what your fund is designed to protect. When you estimate this number, be realistic with yourself. Be kind to yourself. You are not imagining a life of deprivation. You are imagining a period of simplicity, a few months where things are tight but held together. And you are deciding what that costs. That honest number is your target. Once you have begun to build your emergency fund, there is a question of where it should live. This question matters more than it might seem. The fund has two jobs. They seem simple, but they can quietly work against each other. The first job is being available. In a true emergency, a sudden job loss, a medical bill, a repair that cannot wait, you need to be able to access this money within a day or two. It cannot be locked away somewhere inaccessible. It cannot be tied up in investments that take time to sell. When you need it, you need it. The second job is staying put. And here is the quiet tension. The easier it is to reach the money, the easier it is to reach for it when things are not quite an emergency. You see something on sale. A trip comes up. A want, over the course of a few days, starts to feel like a need. And if your emergency fund is sitting right there, in the same account where your everyday money lives, the boundary between emergency and not emergency begins to blur. It is human. It is not a moral failure. It is just how we work when money is visible and accessible. So the answer most people find works well is this: keep it somewhere between reachable and slightly out of sight. A separate account, not a different bank necessarily, but a different account with a name that reminds you what it is: emergency fund, or just safety, or do not touch. Having a separate account creates a small psychological distance. The money is not invisible, but it is not sitting in your daily field of view. You have to go somewhere specific to look at it. You have to cross a small, deliberate line to use it. Some people take this a step further. They keep their emergency fund at a different institution entirely. One where transferring money back to their main account takes an extra business day or two. That small friction is not punishment. It is a brief pause, a moment to ask yourself, is this actually an emergency? Can this wait? Do I genuinely need this today? And most of the time, when you have to wait a day to answer that question, the answer turns out to be no. The money you want should not be here, but the money you need, the money that is genuinely for unexpected necessity, that is exactly what this is for. And when that day comes, you will be glad the money is there, easy enough to reach, and patient enough to have waited. Safe, separate, and slightly out of reach. That is the combination you are looking for. Plain and accessible, subject to the swings of markets, not tangled up with your day-to-day spending, not so buried that finding it in an emergency adds stress, just sitting there quietly, ready. Now here is the part that might feel the most daunting. What if you do not have a few months of expenses saved right now? What if you are starting from much closer to zero? This is where many people stop. The number looks large. The distance between here and there looks long. And the human mind, when it sees a long distance, sometimes decides not to start at all. Not consciously. It just finds other things to think about. It tells itself later, when things are more stable, when there is a better moment. But there is something true about the emergency fund that makes starting small not just acceptable, but correct. You do not build it all at once. You were never meant to. You build it the way almost all good things in life are built. Slowly, over a longer stretch of time than you would prefer. A little at a time, through small and repeated acts of patience. The beginning is the hardest part, not because the first deposit is large. The first deposit can be very small, but because the beginning requires a decision, and decisions take a kind of quiet courage. You decide that something will be different. You open an account, or you name it something that feels real, and you put something in it. $20, $50, whatever is honest and possible for where you are right now. That first small move is the hardest. Everything after it is a little easier, because the account exists now. There is something in it. It has begun. The principle that most people find most helpful is sometimes called paying yourself first. Not last, when there is something left over at the end of the month, because there is rarely something left over. Spending fills the space available. If you have $200 more than you expected this month, spending will generally find a use for it. Instead, you move the money before you spend. When income arrives from work, from any source, a portion goes to the emergency fund first, before anything else, before you see what is left. It does not need to be a large portion. Even a small, consistent amount will build something over time. Because time is generous. It works quietly on your behalf. Month by month, the balance grows. It passes a threshold that feels meaningful to you. Maybe it is the cost of 1 month of rent, and then it keeps going, slowly but reliably. some point. You cannot predict exactly when, but it always comes. You notice something has shifted. The balance is no longer nothing. It is something. It is real. And with that reality comes a feeling you may not have expected. A quiet lightness. A sense that you are, in some small but genuine way, more prepared for whatever comes next than you were before. You do not need to have arrived at your full target to feel that. The first few months of progress change something in the body. The first few $100s changes the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you are building. You are a person who is building something, not rushing, not straining, just steadily putting one small thing in place. That is not a small thing, even though the deposits may be. Some months will be harder. Some months the amount will be very small. Some months an unexpected cost will arrive and you will have to pause or even take a little out. That is fine. That is what the fund is for. Use it when you need it and then resume building it. There is no failing at this. There is only continuing. Let us rest here for a moment, because everything we have talked about tonight has been pointing towards something that is not really about money. It is about peace. Not the peace of having everything you could ever want. Not the peace of having solved every financial question in your life. Not some distant, idealized state of complete financial security. A simpler, quieter, more accessible kind of peace. The peace of knowing that if something goes wrong, you will be okay. That word, okay, is doing a great deal of work there. Not comfortable, not unaffected, not without any difficulty or stress or frustration. Just okay. Able to handle it, still standing on the other side. When you have that knowing settled in your body, something changes in how you move through your days. You do not grip as tightly. You do not brace against the next thing. The background hum of low-level financial worry, which many people carry so constantly that they have stopped noticing it, begins to quiet. And in the quieting of that hum, other things become possible. You can be more present with the people you love because your attention is not being divided. You can think more clearly about the future because you are not spending so much mental energy managing the present. You can take a breath. Researchers who study the relationship between money and well-being have found something interesting and worth sitting with. The relief that comes from going from financial fragility to financial stability, from no cushion to a small one, is often more significant than the relief that comes from any further increase in money above that point. Not because more money does not matter, but because the difference between precarious and stable is profound. It touches something deep. Precarious means anything could topple this. Stable means I have a foundation. And those two ways of standing in the world feel very different from the inside. The emergency fund is not the end of financial health. It is the beginning. It is the first thing, the foundation that everything else can eventually be built on. And it is built not through a windfall or a sudden stroke of luck, but through something more ordinary and more reliable than luck. Through intention, through repetition, through the quiet decision made again and again to put something aside before you spend. Through patience with a number that grows slowly. Through trusting that slowly is enough. It always is. You have stayed with a gentle idea tonight. An emergency fund. A simple, unexciting, quietly powerful thing. Money set aside not to earn or to spend, but simply to be there. A quiet room in the back of your financial life. A candle in the drawer. A soft place to land. You do not need to do anything tonight. You do not need to open an account or calculate any numbers or make any decisions. Tonight was only for listening. Carry these ideas softly, if you like. That crises can become errands. That a few months of essentials, set aside slowly and patiently over time, can change the texture of an entire life. That the peace you are looking for is not far away. It is built, a little at a time, by a person who simply decides to begin and then keeps going. You are already resting. You are already doing the most restful thing there is. Let the thinking slow down now. Let the numbers and the plans and the practical questions all settle quietly into the background, like furniture in a dark room. They will be there in the morning. Tonight there is only this: the warmth, the dark, the stillness. Whatever your financial life looks like tonight, wherever you are on this long, gentle road, you are already moving. simply by thinking about this, simply by caring enough to listen. That matters. Sleep well